Taeyang pressed his back against the broken wall and listened to the explosions outside. Dust fell from the ceiling with each blast. Around him, wounded soldiers lay on makeshift beds, groaning in pain. Some were human like him. Others were aliens from different worlds, all part of the coalition forces fighting against the Vral Empire. He checked his medical bag again. Supplies were running low. They had been trapped in this ruined building for 6 hours now, cut off from the main coalition force. The Vral had them surrounded. "Medic!" someone shouted. "Hyun is down!" Taeyang grabbed his bag and ran toward the voice. His feet crunched on broken glass and debris. Outside, energy weapons flashed red and blue through the shattered windows. The sound of the battle was deafening. He found Hyun lying near the entrance, blood pooling around his leg. The squad leader's face was pale, his jaw clenched tight against the pain. Dabin knelt beside him, her rifle still smoking from recent fire. "Vral plasma shot," Dabin said quickly. Went through his thigh. Taeyang knelt and opened his bag. His hands moved with practiced speed, pulling out medical tools. He had been a doctor back on Earth, working in a busy emergency room in Busan. That felt like a lifetime ago. Now he was here on a planet called Keth 7 in the middle of a war. "This will hurt," Taeyang said calmly. Hyun nodded. He knew the drill. Taeyang worked quickly. The wound was bad, but he had seen worse. The coalition had given him advanced medical technology, tools that could seal wounds and repair tissue faster than anything on Earth. But the Vral weapons were designed to cause maximum damage. They didn't just burn through flesh. They poisoned it, made it harder to heal. As he worked, Taeyang noticed something. The burn pattern was unusual. Most plasma weapons cauterized as they cut, but Vral weapons left the tissue inflamed and swollen. It was almost as if they wanted their victims to suffer longer. "Hold still," he said to Hyun. He applied a gel that would counteract the poison, then used a tissue regenerator to seal the major blood vessels. Hyun grunted but didn't scream. He was tough, a former Special Forces soldier before the war. "You're lucky," Taeyang said. "Few more inches to the left and I couldn't have saved the leg." "Doesn't feel lucky," Hyun muttered. Dabin stood and fired another burst through the window. "We need to move soon. They're closing in." Commander Villith's voice crackled through their communication devices. The reptilian alien was coordinating from a safer position somewhere in the city. "Hold position. Reinforcements are 20 minutes out." "We might not have 20 minutes, Dabin snapped back. Taeyang finished with Hyun and moved to the next patient. An alien soldier with blue skin and 4 arms had taken shrapnel to the chest. The soldier's breathing was labored, and one of his hearts was struggling. Taeyang had learned early in the war that treating alien species was different from treating humans. Different biology, different weak points, different ways to heal. He had spent countless nights studying coalition medical databases, learning everything he could. He worked on the blue-skinned soldier for 10 minutes, stabilizing him enough to survive until proper medical facilities could take over. All the while, the battle raged outside. The building shook with each nearby explosion. Then the wall exploded. Debris flew everywhere. Taeyang was thrown backward, his medical bag scattering across the floor. His ears rang. Through the smoke and dust, he saw them enter. Vral soldiers. They were massive, nearly 8 feet tall, with thick armor covering their bodies. Their faces were hidden behind helmets, but Taeyang had seen them before. They looked almost humanoid, but more muscular, more brutal. Their weapons glowed with deadly energy. Dabin opened fire immediately. Her shots hit one Viral in the chest, but the soldier barely staggered. Their armor was too strong. The Vral raised his weapon to return fire. Taeyang didn't think. He just moved. He grabbed a medical injector from his scattered supplies and ran forward. The Viral soldier didn't see him as a threat. Why would he? Taeyang was just a medic, unarmed and untrained in combat. That was a mistake. Taeyang had studied the Vral anatomy. He had examined their bodies when he treated coalition prisoners who had been tortured. He knew their biology better than most, and he had noticed something interesting in his studies. The Viral had a cluster of nerves at the base of their neck, just above where the armor plates met. It was a vulnerable spot, one that their armor didn't fully protect. Taeyang slammed the injector into that exact spot. The Viral soldier froze. His weapon fell from his hands. His massive body went rigid, then collapsed to the ground with a crash. He wasn't dead, just paralyzed. The drug Taeyang had injected was a powerful muscle relaxant, amplified to account for the Viral's size and different nervous system. The other virile soldiers turned toward Taeyang in surprise. But Deben and the remaining coalition soldiers used that moment to attack. Within seconds, the virile were forced to retreat back through the hole they had blasted in the wall. Silence fell over the room, broken only by the distant sounds of battle. Deben stared at Taeyang. "What did you just do?" Taeyang picked up his medical bag and began gathering his scattered supplies. His hands were steady. "I stopped him. But you're a medic, I'm a doctor," Taeyang corrected quietly. "I know how bodies work. All bodies." Hyun, still lying on the floor with his bandaged leg, laughed weakly. "Remind me never to make you angry." The reinforcements arrived 15 minutes later. The coalition forces pushed the Vral back and secured the area. Taeyang and his patients were evacuated to a medical ship in orbit. That night, as he cleaned his equipment in the ship's medical bay, Taeyang couldn't stop thinking about the Vral soldier. The way he had fallen so easily. The exact spot where the nerves clustered. The perfect dose of paralytic needed to drop someone that size. He pulled out his personal data pad and opened his medical logs. He had been keeping detailed notes on every species he encountered, every injury he treated, every enemy he examined. It was habit from his days as an emergency room doctor. Always document, always learn. He created a new file and titled it Viral Physiology Observations. Then he began to write. He wrote about the nerve cluster, about the plasma weapons and their unusual damage patterns, about the Vral's thick muscles and how they distributed weight, about potential weak points in their biology. It was just medical curiosity, he told himself, professional interest. But somewhere in the back of his mind, a different thought formed. If he could stop one virile soldier with a simple injection, what else could he do with the right knowledge? What other weaknesses did they have that nobody had discovered yet? The war had taken everything from him. His hospital in Busan had been destroyed in a viral raid. His colleagues, his friends, his patients, all gone in a single attack. He had joined the coalition to save lives, to heal the wounded. But maybe, just maybe, the best way to save lives was to understand exactly how to stop the ones causing all the death. Taeyang continued writing late into the night, his fingers moving quickly across the datapad screen. Around him, the medical ship hummed with quiet efficiency. Wounded soldiers slept in their beds, dreaming of home. And in his corner, the quiet medic from Busan documented everything he knew about the enemy's body. Piece by piece, weakness by weakness. He didn't know it yet, but he had just taken the first step down a path that would change the entire war. The Viral Empire had faced many enemies, many warriors, many weapons. But they had never faced someone like Taeyang, someone who understood that the difference between healing and harming was just a matter of where you applied pressure and how hard you pushed. 3 months had passed since the battle at Keth 7, and the war was not going well for the coalition. Every week brought news of another planet falling to the Vril Empire. Every week brought more wounded soldiers to the medical ships. Taeyang barely slept anymore. During the day, he worked in the field hospitals, treating injuries and saving lives. At night, he studied. His quarters were filled with data files, medical scans, and anatomical diagrams. The walls were covered with notes written in his neat handwriting. All of it was about the Viral. He had become obsessed with understanding them. Every time a wounded Viral prisoner was brought in for treatment, Taeyang volunteered to handle the case. Every time coalition forces recovered a Vril body from the battlefield, Taeyang requested permission to examine it. The other medics thought he was just dedicated. They didn't understand what he was really doing. He was building a map, a complete understanding of the Vril species from the inside out, their nervous system, their muscle structure, their organs, their blood chemistry, everything. "You need to rest," Yun told him one evening. The squad leader had recovered from his leg wound and was back on duty. He found Taeyang in the medical bay long after his shift had ended, studying scans on a holographic display. "I'm fine," Taeyang said without looking up. "You're not. You've been working 18-hour days for months. The Vril don't rest. Why should I?" Hyun sighed and sat down beside him. "What are you looking for?" Taeyang was quiet for a moment. Then he pointed at the holographic image floating in front of them. It showed a Viral skeleton with various points marked in red. "Weaknesses," he said simply. "The Viral are strong. Their armor is thick. They can take damage that would kill most species. But no organism is perfect. Everything has vulnerabilities, and you're finding them?" I found 47 so far. Yun stared at him. 47? Pressure points that cause temporary paralysis. Nerve clusters that can be disrupted with electrical stimulation. Blood vessels that, if blocked, reduce their combat effectiveness by 60%. Chemical compounds that interfere with their muscle function. Taeyang zoomed in on different areas of the hologram as he spoke. The coalition has been fighting them with brute force. But that's not how you win against a stronger opponent. Then how do you win? You understand them better than they understand themselves. The next major battle came 2 weeks later. Coalition forces were defending an orbital station called Helix 9. It was a critical supply hub. If the Vural took it, they would control the entire sector. Taeyang was assigned to the station's medical center. Hundreds of wounded were expected. He prepared his supplies and waited for the inevitable. The Vural attack came at dawn station time. Their warships blasted through the outer defenses and deployed boarding parties. Alarms blared throughout the station. Soldiers ran to their positions. Medical teams prepared for casualties. The first wounded started arriving within minutes. Taeyang worked quickly, treating burns, repairing damaged organs, stopping bleeding. His hands moved with automatic precision. He had done this so many times now that he didn't need to think about it anymore. Then someone shouted, "They've breached the medical sector." Taeyang looked up from his patient. Through the medical center's entrance, he could see coalition soldiers falling back, firing desperately at advancing Vural warriors. The massive enemy soldiers were unstoppable, their armor absorbing most of the weapon's fire. "We need to evacuate the patients," a nurse yelled, but there was no time. The Vural were already at the entrance. Dabin appeared, her rifle blazing. She had been assigned to Helix 9's defense force. "Fall back! Get the wounded out of here!" A Vural soldier burst through the entrance, smashing aside 2 coalition defenders. He was enormous, nearly crushing the doorframe as he entered. His armor was scorched and dented, but still functional. He raised his weapon toward the helpless patients on their beds. Taeyang grabbed a medical injector. It happened fast. The Vural soldier was focused on the patients, not on the medic moving toward him. Taeyang knew exactly where to strike. He had studied the Vural anatomy for months. He knew every weakness, every vulnerable point. The injector plunged into a gap in the armor at the Vural's elbow joint. The chemical cocktail inside was Taeyang's own creation. A combination of muscle relaxants and nerve agents calibrated specifically for Vural biology. The soldier's arm went limp. His weapon clattered to the floor. Before the Vural could react, Taeyang struck again, this time at the back of the knee where the armor was thinnest. The soldier's leg buckled. Dabin and the other defenders opened fire, finally able to target the exposed areas Taeyang had created. The Vural fell, but more were coming. Taeyang moved through the medical center like he was performing surgery. Each movement was precise and calculated. He didn't have combat training like Dabin or Hyun. He didn't need it. He had something better. He had knowledge. When a Vural soldier came at him, Taeyang didn't run. He dodged to the left exactly 12 inches, the perfect distance to avoid the sweep of the Vural's arm while staying close enough to strike. His injector found the nerve cluster under the Vural's jaw. Paralysis spread instantly. Another Vural charged. Taeyang threw a medical canister that released an aerosol compound. It wasn't dangerous to humans or most aliens, but the Vural respiratory system reacted badly to it. The soldier gasped and stumbled, giving coalition defenders the opening they needed. Within 10 minutes, the attack on the medical center was repelled. 5 Vural soldiers lay on the ground, all neutralized by Taeyang's precise interventions. None were dead. He was still a medic after all. But they were completely incapacitated. Dabin stared at him. Her face showed a mixture of respect and something else. Fear, maybe, or confusion. "How did you do that?" she asked. Taeyang was already moving back to his patients, checking on those who had been frightened by the attack. "I told you before. I know how bodies work. That wasn't medicine. That was combat. It's the same thing, just applied differently." After the battle, Coalition Command requested Taeyang's presence for a debriefing. He brought his datapad containing all his research notes. When he entered the command center, he found himself facing 3 high-ranking officers, including Commander Velith. "Medic Taeyang," Velith said, his reptilian eyes studying him carefully. "We've received reports of your actions during the battle." "Unusual reports. I defended my patients, sir." "You neutralized 5 Vural soldiers single-handedly. soldiers that our trained combat specialists struggled to stop. Taeyang said nothing. Another officer, a human general, leaned forward. We want to understand how you did it. What techniques did you use? Taeyang placed his datapad on the table and activated it. The holographic display showed his compiled research. Months of data, observations, and analysis filled the air above the table. I've been studying viral physiology since my first encounter with them, he explained. The Coalition has been treating them as if they're invincible. They're not. They have 47 identified physiological vulnerabilities that can be exploited with minimal force. The officers stared at the display. This is... Vileth began, then stopped. He scrolled through the data. Pages and pages of detailed anatomical information, chemical formulas, tactical recommendations. How long did this take you? 3 months of active research. I've examined 73 viral subjects, both living and deceased. Every piece of data here has been verified multiple times. The human general smiled. This is the most comprehensive enemy analysis we've received in 2 years of war. Why didn't you report this earlier? I wanted to be certain. Medical science requires verification. This isn't just medical science, son. This is intelligence. This could change the war. And it did. Within a week, Coalition Command distributed Taeyang's research to all combat units. Special training programs were created based on his findings. Soldiers learned to target the specific weak points he had identified. Medical officers were taught his chemical formulas for compounds that affected viral biology. Taeyang was reassigned from field medic to tactical advisor. They wanted him to train others, to share his knowledge with the entire Coalition military. He agreed, but only on one condition. He would continue working as a medic. He would still treat the wounded. That was who he was. His first training session was attended by 50 combat specialists from various species. They gathered in a lecture hall on the command ship. Taeyang stood at the front, uncomfortable with the attention. The Vril are not unstoppable, he began. They're just a species like any other. They have organs that can fail, nerves that can be disrupted, chemicals that their bodies can't process. If you understand these things, you can fight them effectively. He spent 2 hours explaining his research. The soldiers listened intently, taking notes, asking questions. At the end, one soldier raised his hand. How did you figure all this out? Are you some kind of special operative? No, Taeyang said. I'm just a doctor. And doctors spend their entire lives learning how to fix bodies. Once you understand how to fix something, you understand how to break it too. After the session, Hyun found him in the hallway. You know what you've become, right? A teacher? A weapon. The Coalition is going to use your knowledge to kill viral soldiers. Taeyang looked at his friend. I know. But every viral that my knowledge stops is one less that kills our soldiers. I can live with that. 6 months after Taeyang shared his research, the war had changed. Coalition forces were winning battles that should have been impossible. Viral casualties were rising for the first time since the war began. But something unexpected was happening too. Viral soldiers were surrendering. This had never happened before. The viral were warriors. Their culture valued strength and endurance. Surrender was considered shameful, worse than death. Yet now, entire units were laying down their weapons when faced with Coalition forces using Taeyang's techniques. Coalition Command was puzzled. The intelligence officers studied the data, trying to understand. Taeyang understood. It wasn't just about the physical pain or the injuries. The viral had always been able to endure those. Their whole identity was built on toughness, on being able to fight through damage that would kill others. But Taeyang's methods were different. They were precise, clinical. They bypassed pain tolerance entirely. A viral warrior could endure a broken bone or a burned limb and keep fighting. But when every nerve in your arm suddenly stopped working because a medic injected something into exactly the right spot, there was no glory in that, no honor, just helpless defeat. It was psychological warfare, even though Taeyang had never intended it that way. He had just been trying to stop them efficiently. The mission that would make everything worse came on a cold morning, station time. Coalition intelligence had located a viral prison ship holding captured Coalition soldiers. The prisoners had been held for months, possibly tortured for information. A rescue operation was planned. Hyun would lead a strike team. 12 of the best fighters the Coalition had, equipped with the latest weapons and trained in Taeyang's techniques. We don't need a medic for this, Hyun said during the briefing. It's a quick in and out operation. Combat only. If the prisoners are injured, you'll need medical support, Taeyang replied calmly. He stood at the back of the briefing room, his medical bag already packed. I'm coming. Hyun looked like he wanted to argue, but Taeyang had a reputation now. When he said he was going, people listened. The strike team approached the prison ship in a stealth transport. They docked quietly, cutting through the hull with plasma torches. The plan was simple. Get to the prison hold, free the captives, and leave before the Viral could organize a response. It went wrong immediately. Alarms started blaring the moment they entered the ship. The Viral had been expecting them. It was a trap. Fall back to the transport. Hyun shouted, but they were cut off. Viral soldiers poured into the corridor from both directions, their weapons firing. The strike team took cover behind cargo containers, returning fire. They were surrounded. Taeyang crouched behind a container, assessing the situation. There were too many Viral. Even with the team's training and his techniques, they were outnumbered 3-1. Within minutes, half the strike team was wounded. He looked at his medical bag, then at the fallen Viral soldiers on the ground, their weapons lying beside them. For 6 months, people had been asking him if he could fight. He had always said he was just a medic, that he only used his knowledge defensively, to stop attackers when necessary. But they were going to die if someone didn't do something. Taeyang picked up a fallen Viral weapon. It was heavy, designed for their larger hands, but he could manage it. He also grabbed his medical scanner from his bag. The scanner could identify biological signatures through walls and armor. What are you doing? Dabin shouted. She was bleeding from a shoulder wound but still firing. Ending this, Taeyang said. He moved into the corridor. The first Viral soldier saw him and raised his weapon. Taeyang was faster, not because he was a better shot, but because he knew exactly where to aim. The scanner showed him the Viral's body through the armor. He fired at the exposed nerve cluster at the hip. The soldier collapsed. 2 more Viral came around the corner. Taeyang's scanner identified their vital points. 2 shots. Both down. He moved through the ship like he was performing surgery in an operating room. Each shot was precise. Each target was a specific biological weak point that his scanner revealed. He didn't waste ammunition. He didn't make unnecessary moves. The Viral started to realize something was wrong. They had fought human soldiers before. Humans were good fighters, adaptable and clever. But they weren't like this. This human moved with absolute certainty, like he could see through their armor, like he knew their bodies better than they did. One Viral soldier fired at Taeyang and missed. Taeyang's return shot hit the soldier in the nerve cluster behind the knee. The leg went limp. Before the soldier could fall, Taeyang's second shot struck the shoulder nerve point. The Viral's weapon dropped from useless fingers. Fall back, a Viral commander shouted in their language. It's him. It's the healer. Taeyang understood enough Viral to catch the meaning. They knew who he was. The strike team used the confusion to push forward. They reached the prison hold and freed the captives. 15 coalition soldiers, weak and injured but alive. Taeyang immediately started treating the worst cases, even as fighting continued around them. They fought their way back to the transport. The Viral had stopped pursuing them aggressively. Instead, they kept their distance, firing from cover. They seemed afraid to get close. When the transport finally undocked and jumped to safety, Taeyang sat in the back with the rescued prisoners, treating their injuries. His hands were steady as he worked, showing no sign of what he had just done. But Hyun watched him with troubled eyes. Dabin sat across from him, staring. You killed them, Dabin said quietly. No, Taeyang replied without looking up from his patient. I incapacitated them. The shots were precise. They'll recover with proper medical care. You shot them like you knew exactly where every organ, every nerve, every blood vessel was located. I do know. That's the point. This isn't what medics do. Taeyang finally looked at her. His face was calm, but there was something in his eyes. Exhaustion, maybe. Or resignation. I'm still a medic, he said. I'm saving lives. Just not always in the way you expect. The rescued prisoners were debriefed after they recovered. Their reports were disturbing. The Viral had questioned them extensively about one thing, Taeyang. They wanted to know everything about the human medic. His background, his training, his knowledge. The Viral were afraid of him. Coalition intelligence intercepted enemy communications and confirmed it. The Viral had given Taeyang a name in their language. It translated roughly to the Pale Healer, or the one who knows the death touch. More troubling, they had upgraded his threat status. He was now priority target alpha. If encountered, virile soldiers were ordered to kill him immediately from a distance. They were specifically instructed not to engage him in close combat. When Taeyang read the intelligence report, he felt nothing. No pride, no fear, just a distant acknowledgement of fact. He returned to his work. There was always more work. More wounded to treat, more data to analyze, more techniques to develop. But the coalition forces noticed the change in him. The quiet medic who had once been unremarkable was now something else. Something that made even his own people uncomfortable. Jiwan, a young nurse who had recently joined his medical team, watched him work one evening. She was fresh from Earth, still idealistic about the war. She had heard the stories about Taeyang and hadn't believed them. "Is it true?" she asked him. "That you can kill a virile soldier with just your hands?" Taeyang was organizing medical supplies. He didn't look at her. "I can stop them. That's different from killing, but you know how to kill them. I know 47 ways to stop a virile heart. I know 183 nerve clusters that can cause permanent paralysis. I know which chemicals will make their blood stop carrying oxygen." He finally looked at her. "But I also know how to restart that heart, how to repair those nerves, how to counteract those chemicals. Knowledge is just knowledge. It's what you do with it that matters. Does it bother you, knowing all that?" "Every day." "Then why continue?" "Because every virile I stop is one less that hurts our people. Someone has to understand them. Someone has to be able to fight them on equal terms. And I'd rather it be me carrying this knowledge than force others to learn it." Jiwan was quiet for a moment. "They say the Vrul are afraid of you now." "Good. Fear ends wars faster than bullets." But that night, alone in his quarters, Taeyang sat on his bed and looked at his hands. These hands had saved thousands of lives. They had performed delicate surgeries, repaired damaged organs, brought people back from the edge of death. Now those same hands had become weapons. Precise, deadly weapons. He opened his personal datapad and looked at the growing file of raw biology data. It was enormous now, containing years' worth of research. Every weakness, every vulnerability, every way to hurt them or heal them. He thought about the virile soldiers he had stopped during the rescue mission. He had been precise. He had used non-lethal techniques where possible. But he had still hurt them, still made them helpless, still used his medical knowledge as a weapon. Was he still a healer? Or had he become something else? His communication device beeped. Another battle had started. More wounded were incoming. They needed him in the medical bay. Taeyang closed his datapad, grabbed his medical bag, and headed to work. The questions could wait. His patients couldn't. But across the galaxy, in the command centers of the Viral Empire, military leaders were having urgent discussions. The siege of Vral Prime's moon was supposed to be the Coalition's greatest victory. 3 battle fleets converged on the heavily fortified moon base. It was the largest offensive operation in the war's history. Thousands of soldiers prepared for the assault. Taeyang was assigned to the forward operating base on the moon's surface. The medical facility was massive, designed to handle thousands of casualties. He would be supervising 50 medics and nurses, coordinating treatment for what everyone expected would be a brutal battle. Among his staff was Jiwan, the young nurse who had questioned him weeks earlier. She had requested the assignment specifically to work with him. She believed in his reputation, in his ability to save lives under impossible circumstances. She didn't fully understand yet what that reputation meant. The assault began at dawn, moon time. Coalition forces hit the Vrul defenses from 3 directions. The sky lit up with weapons fire. Explosions shook the ground. Within an hour, the first wounded started arriving at the medical facility. Taeyang moved through the facility like a machine, coordinating treatment, making decisions, saving lives. His team worked efficiently under his direction. Hours passed in a blur of blood, wounds, and desperate medical procedures. Then the base alarm started blaring. The Vrul had broken through the perimeter. All combat personnel to defensive positions. The base commander ordered over the communication system. "Medical staff, evacuate non-critical patients." But there were too many critical patients. They couldn't all be moved. Taeyang grabbed his medical bag and a sidearm that Coalition Command had insisted he carry. He had resisted for months, but they had made it mandatory for all personnel in combat zones. Get the patients to the transport ships, he told Jiwan. Anyone who can be moved safely, move them now. What about you? I'll stay with the critical cases. The Vural assault was fierce. They had committed everything to this attack, knowing that if they lost this base, they would lose control of the entire sector. Hundreds of their soldiers poured through the breached perimeter, overwhelming the coalition defenders. They reached the medical facility within 20 minutes. Taeyang stood in the main ward, surrounded by patients who were too injured to move. Jiwan and 3 other nurses had refused to leave, staying behind to help. They could hear the fighting getting closer, the sound of weapons fire and shouting. Then the doors exploded inward. Vural soldiers entered, their weapons ready. They swept through the facility, checking corners and rooms. When they found the main ward, they paused. Dozens of wounded coalition soldiers lay helpless in their beds. Medical staff stood among them, unarmed except for Taeyang's sidearm. The lead Vural soldier spoke in broken coalition standard language. You will surrender. You will be taken as prisoners. Taeyang stepped forward. These patients can't be moved. They're too badly injured. You'll kill them if you try to transport them. The Vural tilted his head, studying Taeyang. Then recognition flickered in his eyes. He spoke quickly to the other Vural soldiers in their own language. They all turned to stare at Taeyang. You are the healer, the lead soldier said. The one called Taeyang. I am. The Vural soldiers shifted nervously. Even outnumbering him 10-1, even with him holding just a single sidearm, they were afraid. Taeyang could see it in their body language, in the way they kept their distance. Come with us, the soldier said. Leave the others. You are wanted by our commanders. No, I'm staying with my patients. Then they will die. We have orders. Taeyang raised his sidearm, not pointing it at anyone, just holding it ready. His other hand held his medical scanner. You can try to take them, but you know what I'm capable of. How many of you will I drop before you stop me? 3-5? All of you? It was a bluff. He couldn't take on 10 Vural soldiers alone, even with his knowledge of their weaknesses. But they didn't know that. They only knew his reputation. The standoff lasted for several seconds. Then the Vural commander outside the facility ordered a retreat. The coalition counterattack had been more effective than expected. The Vural soldiers backed away, keeping their weapons trained on Taeyang but not firing. When they were gone, Jiwan stared at him. They were afraid of you. I know. But you're just one person with a pistol. They don't see me as a person anymore. They see me as something else. A threat. The battle raged for 6 more hours. The medical facility was hit twice more, but coalition forces held the line. By evening, the Vural were in full retreat. The coalition had won, but the victory felt hollow to Taeyang. That night, after the wounded had been stabilized and the emergency was over, Taeyang found himself alone in a storage room, sitting on a supply crate. His hands were shaking. He stared at them, confused. His hands never shook. He had fought in dozens of battles. He had treated thousands of patients under fire. He had faced death more times than he could count. But his hands had always been steady, not anymore. He heard footsteps and looked up. Hyun stood in the doorway. The squad leader looked tired, his armor scorched from the battle. I heard what happened, Hyun said. The Vural ran from you. They ran from what they think I am. Hyun sat down beside him. What are you, Taeyang? It was a good question. Taeyang had been asking himself the same thing for months. I know 247 ways to stop a virile heart, he said quietly. I know 183 nerve clusters that cause paralysis. I know their pain receptors better than their own doctors do. I can kill them in my sleep. And I remember every single time I've used that knowledge. How many? 37 virile soldiers I've personally stopped in combat. None killed, all incapacitated or wounded. I remember each one. Where I struck them. What techniques I used. How long it took them to fall. His voice was flat, emotionless. I'm a healer. That's what I trained for. That's who I wanted to be. But I've become something else, a warrior. Worse, a warrior knows they're there to fight. They accept it. I'm a healer who has learned to hurt people with the same skills I use to save them. Every time I look at a Vural soldier, I see 2 things. How to fix them and how to break them. And the worst part is, it's the same knowledge. The exact same. Hyun was quiet for a moment. But you use it to protect people. To save lives, do I? Or do I just tell myself that to feel better about what I've become? Taeyang looked at his friend. I developed a paralytic compound specifically designed for viral biology. I tested it on 3 prisoners. It caused them intense pain for 6 hours before wearing off. I documented the results. I refined the formula, and now coalition forces use it across all theaters of war. You're ending the war. I'm torturing people scientifically. That's what chemical warfare is. And I've become very good at it. The door opened again. Jiwan entered carrying a medical data pad. She stopped when she saw them. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. It's fine, Taeyang said. What do you need? There's a request from Coalition Command. They've captured a high-ranking VRAL officer. He's wounded and asking specifically to speak with you. Taeyang stood up, his hands steady again. The moment of weakness had passed. He was back in control. Take me to him. The viral officer was held in a secure medical room under guard. He had taken a plasma shot to the chest and would need surgery to survive. He was conscious, his breathing labored. Taeyang entered alone, leaving the guards outside. He approached the bed and looked at the wounded officer. The viral's eyes followed him, alert despite the pain. Why do you do this? The officer asked in perfect coalition standard language. You are a healer. I have read your file. You took oaths to save lives. Yet you have become our greatest enemy. I still save lives. I save coalition lives by stopping viral soldiers from killing them, by torturing us, by using our own biology against us. Your species invaded human space, destroyed our worlds, killed millions of my people. Did you expect us to just accept that? The viral officer coughed, blood flecking his lips. We are warriors. War's our way. But you are different. You fight without honor. Without rage. You are cold. Clinical. Like we are specimens in a laboratory. Taeyang prepared a medical scanner, checking the officer's wounds. You're dying. The shot went through your primary heart. I can save you, but you need surgery now. Why would you save me? I am your enemy. Because I'm a doctor. That's what we do. But you are also a killer. I've never killed anyone. I've stopped them, hurt them, made them unable to fight. But I've never killed. Taeyang began setting up the surgical equipment. Though I could. I know exactly how. I've documented 47 methods, each one more efficient than the last. The viral stared at him. You have made yourself into a monster. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just a healer trying to end a war the only way I know how. By understanding the enemy so completely that they can't win. This does not end wars. This makes them worse. Then surrender. Tell your leaders to negotiate. Because I'm not stopping. Every day I learn more. Every day I find new weaknesses. Eventually I'll know everything about your species. Every vulnerability, every flaw. And when that happens, the viral empire will have no choice but to make peace. The surgery took 3 hours. Taeyang worked with his usual precision, repairing the damaged heart, sealing blood vessels, ensuring the officer would survive. Jiwan assisted, watching him work with a mixture of admiration and horror. When it was done, the viral officer was stable. He would live. The message from Coalition Command came as a surprise to everyone, especially Taeyang. The viral empire had agreed to peace talks. After 3 years of war, they were willing to negotiate. But there was an unusual condition. They insisted that Taeyang be present at the negotiations. Why me? Taeyang asked Commander Violet. They were in the command ship's briefing room, along with several high-ranking officers from different coalition species. They didn't give a detailed reason, Velith replied. But intelligence suggests they need to understand you. They need to know if humanity has more like you. They're afraid, another officer said. Your techniques have spread throughout our forces. Their casualties have tripled. Their surrender rates have increased 500%. They're losing and they know it. Taeyang felt tired. He had felt tired for months now, maybe years. When do we leave? Tomorrow. The talks will be held on Neutral Station Nexus 4. Full diplomatic delegation plus military advisors. Velith studied him carefully. You understand what this means? You've become a symbol, not just of coalition military success, but of something that frightens them. Human adaptability. I'm not a symbol. I'm just a medic who learned too much. That's exactly what frightens them. The journey to Nexus 4 took 2 days. Taeyang spent the time reviewing his medical logs, ensuring all his research was organized. If the Vril wanted to understand what he had done, he would show them everything. Hyun and Dabin accompanied him as part of the security detail. Jiwon insisted on coming too despite Taeyang's protests. She had become his assistant in recent months, learning his techniques, understanding his methods. When they arrived at Nexus 4, the virile delegation was already there. Taeyang saw them through the observation windows as their ship docked. Tall, heavily armored, moving with the confidence of born warriors. The first meeting was formal. Both delegations gathered in a large conference room designed for interspecies negotiations. The coalition sat on one side, the Viral on the other. Translators stood ready, though most participants spoke coalition standard language. The Viral leader was named Warlord Kreneth. He was older than most Viral soldiers Taeyang had seen, with scars covering his visible skin. His eyes were sharp and intelligent. Kreneth's gaze found Taeyang immediately. "You are smaller than I imagined." "Less impressive." Taeyang stood up from his seat. He was wearing his medical uniform, not military dress. His medical bag sat at his feet. "Most dangerous things are." The room went silent. Hyun tensed, ready to intervene if needed. But Kreneth simply nodded slowly. "You have killed many of my soldiers," Kreneth said. "I've stopped them. I haven't killed anyone. A distinction without difference in war. No, there's a very important difference. Everything I've stopped I can also fix." Kreneth leaned forward. "Explain." Taeyang activated his datapad. A holographic display appeared above the conference table, showing his compiled research. 3 years of medical data on viral physiology. I've studied your species extensively. Every injury I've caused, I've documented. Every technique I've developed, I've analyzed. I know your weaknesses because I know your strengths. I understand your biology completely." The virile delegation stared at the display. The amount of data was staggering. Thousands of pages of anatomical information, chemical formulas, medical procedures. "This is..." one of the viral advisors began, then stopped. "This is how we've been defeating you," Taeyang said. "Not with superior weapons or tactics. With knowledge. With understanding." Kreneth's expression was unreadable. "You have made us vulnerable." "Yes, but that's not all I've done." Taeyang changed the display. New information appeared, medical procedures and treatments he had developed specifically for viral biology. "Your species has a genetic disorder affecting approximately 3% of your population. It causes the secondary heart to fail prematurely. Your doctors know about it but have no effective treatment. I've developed one." The room was completely silent now. "There's also a neural disease that appears in elderly viral. It's similar to what humans call Alzheimer's. I've identified the biological mechanism and created a treatment protocol that should slow its progression by 70%. Why?" Kreneth asked. His voice was different now, uncertain. "Why would you help us?" "Because I'm a doctor. This is what doctors do. We heal." Taeyang looked directly at the viral warlord. "I've spent 3 years learning how to hurt your people. But all that knowledge, it works both ways. Everything I know about stopping you, I also know about healing you." One of the viral medical advisors stood up. "May I examine this data?" "That's why I brought it." The negotiations continued for hours, but the tone had changed. The viral delegation was still cautious, still suspicious, but something had shifted. Taeyang's offer to share medical knowledge had caught them off guard. During a break, Kreneth approached Taeyang privately. 2 guards accompanied him, but they kept their distance. "I do not understand you," Kreneth said. "You are our most effective enemy. You have caused more damage to our forces than any other individual in this war. Yet you offer to heal us. The war needs to end. I realized something months ago. You respect strength and you understand pain, but you've never faced someone who understands your bodies better than you do yourselves. That frightened you. That's why you're here. You admit you meant to frighten us?" "No, I meant to stop you from killing my people." "The fear was just a side effect." Taeyang paused. "But I can use that fear constructively. You're afraid of what I know. You're afraid that every human might be like me. But we're not. I'm unusual even among humans. My level of knowledge is rare. How can we be certain? You can't, but I can show you that this knowledge doesn't have to be a weapon. It can be medicine. It can be cooperation." He gestured to his datapad. "Everything I've learned about viral biology, I'm willing to share with your doctors. Not the combat applications. The healing ones. Treatments for diseases you didn't even know you had. Surgical techniques that could save thousands of lives. Kreneth studied him for a long time. Why, what do you gain? Peace. And maybe, just maybe, the chance to stop being a weapon and go back to being a healer. The negotiations continued for 3 days. Slowly, carefully, both sides worked toward an agreement. The coalition would withdraw from certain territories. The Viral would recognize human sovereignty and cease aggressive expansion. Prisoners would be exchanged. Reparations would be discussed, and Taeyang's medical research would be shared with Viral medical institutions, supervised by neutral parties to ensure only the healing applications were transmitted. On the final day, as both sides prepared to sign the preliminary peace agreement, Jiwon found Taeyang standing alone in an observation room, looking out at the stars. Do you regret it? She asked. Everything you did? What you became? Taeyang was quiet for a long moment. Every single day. I remember every Viral soldier I hurt. I remember their faces, where I struck them, how they fell. I've documented everything because I can't forget anyway. But would you do it again? Yes, if I had to. That's what makes it worth regretting. He turned to face her. I became something I never wanted to be. I used knowledge meant for healing as a weapon. But every day the war continued, more people died. Human, Viral, all the coalition species. Someone had to find a way to stop it. And I realized I had the knowledge to do that. By becoming the thing they feared most. By showing them that humans can understand anything, adapt to anything, overcome anything. Even our enemies. He looked back at the stars. The galaxy thought humans were useful but unremarkable. Good at adapting but not exceptional. But we are exceptional. When a human truly dedicates themselves to understanding something, there's no limit to what they can learn. That's our real strength. Not our weapons or our courage. Our ability to learn and apply knowledge. The peace agreement was signed that evening. Humans and Viral, standing together in the same room for the first time in years without weapons raised. The ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy. Taeyang stood in the back watching. He wasn't on the stage. He didn't want to be. But everyone knew he was the reason this was happening. After the ceremony, as people celebrated, Taeyang quietly left. He took a transport shuttle back to Coalition space, back to the hospital ships where wounded soldiers still needed care. He had made a decision. He would continue working as a medic. He would treat anyone who needed help, human or Viral or any other species. The war was over, but there were still injuries to heal, still patients who needed care. 6 months after the peace treaty was finalized, Taeyang opened a medical clinic on a neutral space station. It was small, just him and 2 assistants, but it was open to everyone. Former Viral soldiers sometimes came. Some wanted treatment. Some just wanted to see him to understand who he really was. He treated them all with the same careful attention he gave everyone else. One day, a young human approached him. She was maybe 20 years old, fresh-faced and idealistic. Dr. Taeyang, she asked. I'm studying to be a medic. I've read about what you did during the war. They say you won the war without being a soldier. How did you do it? Taeyang looked at her, considering his answer carefully. Humans have a gift. We're adaptable. We learn, we understand. When we study something completely, whether it's how to heal it or how to break it, we become very effective. Is that what makes us special?